All right, welcome to another episode of the WP Crowd. Today we're not really we're like coffee crowd. Because today we're talking
serious business, Roy.
We're talking about coffee today. And somehow I believe that in the next half an hour or so, we'll manage to relate that back to WordPress, even if I have to force it down your throat. But first, let's do some introductions. We have a new person on the show. I don't think you've been on the show before.
No, I have not. This is the first round.
So we'll start.
Say hi, Roy.
So why don't you start off? Because we don't know who you are.
God, I wish that were true. My name is Andrew Norcross. I helped run Reactive Studios. I've been doing this for about 10 years. I'm on here because apparently I got pulled into a Twitter thread about coffee because that seems to happen all the time. Whenever anything coffee or oddly enough tiny house related comes up, and then here we are.
All right. For the record, Josh brought you up in the last podcast.
Yeah, I tried to play my Carl card in reference to like high-end PHP development, but I had a Norcross card in my WordCamp Miami card stack, and so it was like, oh, you get plus 10 caffeine and you get Carl powers because I'm playing both. That's how we got.
I have a stack of those still. Like, I don't know what to do with them because I am not in a position in my life where I need to give people cards of me, like sports cards. Like, I don't want to give anybody the wrong idea.
I am not capable of sports at all.
No, I'm capable of sports. I was an athlete in school. Like, I'm not capable of giving a shit about. Oh, sorry. What's the rule on swearing? I probably should have asked.
More than allowed.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Go for it.
Yeah, I just don't really have any interest in being famous. So, in any capacity.
Well, then you're on the right podcast because fame does not come with this podcast.
Good. I feel better about that.
All right, Josh, who are you again?
Hi, I'm Josh Pollack. I'm the lead developer, founder, and space astronaut grade 3 for Caldera WP. We make Caldera Forms. It's a drag and drop responsive form builder.
And Chris, who's in bed.
I am Chris Flanagan. I'm extremely relaxed right now. I am a developer for FlowPress out of Toronto, though I live in Florida, and I blog at whoischris.com.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you guys just kind of run with it, but I'm gonna give you bait because I am the bait master. I have a cup of coffee here. I have a cup of coffee that I just made, and I think it's fancy as shit because I made it with my Nespresso machine.
Your what?
An espresso.
Espresso.
If you don't know what an espresso is, it's kind of like a Keurig.
Oh, I do know.
Exactly
I'm just really taken back by the fact that you're bragging about it.
What the fuck is wrong with you, Roy? I told you on Facebook to come back with you with something constructive to add.
So, yeah, have at it. I'm gonna enjoy my Nespresso.
How are you having it, Roy? You got cream in there or sugar? How are you doing your Nespresso?
It's a thick and creamy, intense and creamy variety. It's arpeggio. It's a
So what kind of bullshit are you putting in this bullshit excuse for coffee because you don't like coffee?
I love coffee. I just don't care enough to sit there and grind away, beans from like children of South America and then sit there waiting for somehow a French press to work because I don't even know how that shit works.
Okay, so two things.
Gravity is how that works.
First off, I have exhausted my Chemex that I drink out of Vader's skull, and I only had 15 minutes before this to make coffee, so I couldn't make another Chemex. So time to press the French press.
All right, can we start with the French press because that seems like the favorite go-to. It seems like you could buy French press connected to anything. Why would someone use a French press? Like, what's the benefit of a French press over? Let's say our base point now is we'll say you grind your own coffee, but then you throw it into a coffee machine. Why is a French press better than that?
There is no, in my opinion, I mean, we're not talking about espresso here. In my opinion, there is no machine that plugs into the wall that makes coffee and doesn't fucking suck.
Okay, but why? Why is the French press better?
That's a wrong statement, but keep going.
Okay. I mean, I use a Chemex, which is the thing that like is powered by your hand, right?
Yeah, you got your science maker coffee. I understand.
Right.
Because lab,
For the people who don't know, the Chemex.
40 minutes making coffee. I use a French press because you grind your beans, you pour your water in it, you come back to it 10 minutes later, and you push the thing, and it's done. And it's pretty fucking good. It's not the best coffee in the world, but as far as like a decent coffee that doesn't require any fancy equipment, besides a French press, it is pretty good, and you don't need to like sit there and like slowly pour shit into. Or like Norcross is probably gonna come at me with like, hey, I have some fancy machines better than yours.
I own 9 coffee makers.
Wait, just for people who don't know what a Chemex is, because I didn't know what a Chemex was when I first met Josh, and he said Chemex the one time I looked it up. It's literally a science experiment for like, that you buy at like a child's like science store, but it makes coffee. Like there's like Bunsen's and like beakers and tubes involved, right?
There are no tubes. They definitely do make a thing that makes it seem like a burner, but that's just so you could like put it on your stove, because it's glass. So if you put it on your stove to stay hot, it would probably break. But they make this thing that you could like put on your stove to keep it warm. One of the things I like about it is I have a hot cup of coffee and then I come back a few hours later, and it tastes really great when it's like room temperature. But yeah, it's like a glass bulb that's like convex here and then back out. And you just do a slow pour. One of the things I love about it is they have better filters, and they encourage you to like get into the way that you do your coffee in terms of you pour slowly, like just enough to get it damp so it blooms, and then you do a very slow pour after a while. It really makes a really smooth, low-acid cup of coffee. It's just an involved process, and it's like the one thing in my life that I have optimized for performance with no concern for time, right? Everything else, I'm like, how the fuck can I get this faster? That thing, I'm like, I will take it as slow as possible.
And then what do you like about the coffee that produces versus, let's say, the French press? Because you said the French press is kind of like your secondary. What?
It's smoother.
Yeah, what is it you're looking for?
And it's richer.
Okay.
see, I like the French press. I can taste the difference from the French press in my plug-in-the-wall dripper. I can taste the difference. Same beans, it's different. But the fact is, it's a pain in the ass to clean the French press. I
That's
can't
why I use that one.
sink, I can't. She's fine. The dog can stay here. I can't, it's just, I have to go out in the yard and dump my beans out there, and then I have to scrub that fucker out. F word's okay, right? We're good with that.
Yeah, our advertisers don't care.
Okay. So I have to scrub that out, and then you got to let it dry, and then anyway, it's just a pain. It takes time, and I think the drip makes perfectly fine coffee if you use good fresh ground beans. It makes fine coffee.
Chris, you're done. You're fired.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Dude.
So of my 9 machines, one of them is a regular drip machine. It's the one I use more than any other. In part because I drink 5 or 6 cups of coffee in the morning, and your procedure, Josh, that you just outlined, first off, the second cup wouldn't be ready by the time I'm done with the first. Third, second, continue on. Also, the most people's problem have nothing to do with the machines. Yes, like my drip machine was not cheap. It's a Swedish one, and it has an on button, and that's it. No timers, no burn plate. It goes into a carafe. A lot of times those drip machines, it's a glass carafe that nobody ever cleans really well, and then it's sitting on a burn plate, which means it's going to keep cooking the coffee, so it's going to taste like shit. Probably 15 minutes after it's done, because it keeps cooking it. Which is why those, like, if you leave it on there, eventually it just turns into sludge and burns. Well, that's the end result of letting it sit there. And so it's not the machine. It's usually it's the people don't use good coffee. Or their water sucks. I live in Florida. We have, like Chris, we've got very hard water. Full of
well
limestone.
water. It's disgusting. So we get spring water shipped to our house in the big 5-gallon containers.
Yeah,
I can vouch for the quality of his spring water.
Yeah, like I've got a thing hooked up, to my water from the outside, and then I've got more filters on the inside. So by the time it actually comes out into some sort of whatever, it's actually going to be cleaned up.
Mhm.
But I mean, French press is fine. I mean, frankly, if I was going to do French press, I'd probably, I have an AeroPress, and I'd probably use that because your issues, Chris, about cleaning, the AeroPress solves those problems. It's a lot easier. You just basically push it out at the end, and just all the grounds and shit just go right into the trash. Like I don't have to worry about all that gummed up. And they're like $35 on Amazon. I have a siphon machine. I have a manual espresso machine. I've got a electric espresso machine. I've got a pour over. I've got a French press. I've got an AeroPress. I've got, what else do I have? I built something so I can make cold brew in large batches, like gallons at a time.
See, I make old school or simple cold brew just using my French press, and it comes out pretty good. I know it's not amazing, but it comes out pretty good.
Yeah, and I just do that at scale. I mean, I from Target, I got a jug that's like yay tall, and it has like a tube that hooks up to the lid. That's for like infusing or whatever. So I just like wrap that in cheesecloth, pour my coffee in there, and let it go to town. And I've done it with, I'm trying to figure out a way to do that on a smaller scale so I can just make more. Like I bought bottles so I can, like I'll make a huge batch of it and then I'll bottle it up. So that way, I can give it, because people always want some, where I can just take one bottle with me and not really care, what happens to it. As long as it's glass, I'm happy. But like the machine, funny enough, here's your WordPress tie-in. Carrie Dills, it was a couple years ago, and I was having a particularly difficult weekend home improvement wise, which resulted in me having to buy a new door. And so that's when I found out that the holes that were drilled into my front door for doorknobs were not any sort of standard. So no lock fit, other than the one that was on there that I took off that broke the moment I took it off. I didn't have a doorknob for like a week, but I'm in the suburbs, so nobody cares. And in that weekend, ants had invaded my coffee maker and were all in the guts of it. Where I couldn't clean it because it was full, it was all where the electric and the chips are and all that stuff.
Weird.
So yeah, it was ants are attracted to coffee for the most part. And they're also attracted to water. So between those, certain ones like sugar ants are usually attracted to water. A lot of ants actually, for some reason, like coffee. I don't know why. But so between the two of them, it was full. And then I bitched about it on Twitter, which I don't like doing at all. About those kind of things, I bitch on Twitter all the time, but just like not about those things.
Yeah, out there.
Yeah, no, like that sort of stuff. And I took a shower, and Carrie Dills had spun up a little site, and she's like, "What coffee maker do you want?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it. I can afford a company." I'm like, "I can get a coffee maker. I'm just upset right now." And by the time I was out of the shower, it was like, because it was like a $300 coffee maker, and like a good 75 or like 75% of it was done by the time I was out of the shower. Like it funded, and this is before like all the GoFundMe's and all those things. She just set up a simple HTML page with a PayPal button. It was like an hour and a half.
Wow.
And it was done, and it showed up 2 days later.
Yeah, that's awesome. Carrie's awesome.
Got it?
Oh, it was great. And it's still going strong. Like the thing's a beast. Everyone that I've referred to, like the biggest thing people deal with that they don't realize is that stupid burn plate. Because that's constantly messing up the flavor of your coffee, which none of those other devices that Josh is singing the praises of, none of them do that. So inherently, yeah, if you're going to have coffee sitting in a giant vessel cooking for an hour compared to something you just made, yeah, of course it's going to taste better.
But that's also about the fact that you have to have coffee that doesn't need to be so hot that you can't taste it or you hate it, right? Like crappy coffee at a certain temperature is like whatever, like you can't taste it, just burning you. But if you have good quality coffee, like I enjoy that like second cup of my Chemex because it's room temperature, but it's fucking great,
Well, yeah, but it hasn't been sitting on a burn plate. That's my point. So if you get a drip machine that doesn't have a burn plate, you won't find most of those issues.
Interesting point.
Do you put anything in your coffee at all, Norcross?
Depends on what it is. The better the coffee, the less likely I am to put anything in it. Usually in the mornings, a lot of times, again, because I'm drinking 4 or 5 cups before noon, easy. Probably before 10. So I will put a little bit of cream and sugar there just because I don't want to pour that much acid on my stomach at once.
Makes sense.
But later in the afternoon and stuff, like that's when I'll break out one of the other things and I'll actually take 10, 15 minutes because in part because I need a quick break from working. And that's when I'll break out one of the other machines and I'll go ahead and do, and that one I'll usually drink, I drink straight.
How about you guys? Chris, do you
I find that my cold brew, when I'm drinking cold brew, I don't want anything in there but the coffee. There's just something powerful about that cold brew flavor. But when I'm drinking hot coffee in the morning, I always put a splash of cream. Always.
no sugar?
No sugar. No, I'm not a fan of sugar.
And Josh, you just drink it straight, right? Like,
Yeah.
Well,
I like my
Josh,
coffee like I like my metal.
Josh,
like
you
your
just
what?
chew on the beans at that point, right? Like,
No, so I mean I do like a occasional like we actually have one of those milk frother machines. I'll occasionally do that as a nice thing, and like there's a sandwich place near me that has decent coffee and that they do the like almond milk froth. So I'll get that, but like yeah, I really like coffee, so I don't mess with its taste by putting stuff in there. But can we actually discuss quantity? Because here's the thing, I used to be one of those like I'm going to drink like 47 gallons of coffee a day people. And then I had a doctor who convinced me that for my health or some crap, I should not drink coffee. And that lasted for a few years. I should have never listened to him, even though he was right. It was essential for what was ailing me. But he literally said, like, you can't drink coffee. And I was like, can I start smoking cigarettes again? Like, I need something here. That was what I said. He just looked at me like a jerk. I've done some research that suggests that you get good health benefits in terms of your heart and awakeness benefit from drinking 1 to 3 cups of coffee a day. And beyond that, you end up increasing your stress levels, which is bad for your heart. And also it can become fatiguing, that much caffeine versus a stimulant. So I've tried that and the like stomach acid reasons. I've tried to stick to 1 to 3 cups of coffee a day. Whereas like Norcross seems to take like a bath in coffee and then go from there. And obviously I respect Norcross for a lot of reasons, especially for like in this subject. So can we discuss quantity? Because I sometimes have like 1.5 cups of coffee in a day.
Yeah, I mean,
crazy.
It's one of those weird things where, I mean, and I've read all the studies and every time anyone comes out, I read it too. Like I try to space it out a bit. The stomach stuff is legitimate. The issue is the men in my family have horrible stomachs, regardless of whatever we do. To where I've been taking stomach medicine, prescription stuff since I was 18. Like my grandfather had half a stomach taken out. My dad was in the first U.S. clinical trial for Pollack. Like we just have fucked up stomachs. So it's already bad, and like it can't. And I just had an endoscopy, and everything was fine. So. I mean, the whole thing with stimulants is that affects everybody differently. Like, will I ever drink decaf? No. Period. No, I mean, putting aside the fact as to how decaf is made, which totally is not anything I want to be involved with. It's like, I like the taste of coffee, but I also like the benefit of coffee. There's other beverages that I like the taste of that don't do the other side. So why would you drink decaf? Like I keep a couple Keurig ones, like my mom or grandmother comes over because they only drink decaf because they're old. And so, but yeah, like stimulants in general don't affect me like the way that they affect normal people. They never have. I seem to be able to take a lot of stimulants and no blood pressure change. Like they've done, like I've had blood pressure tests and all the stuff done as I'm my normal day. And it doesn't even register.
I'm with you, man. I had my doctor. I get my blood test or my blood pressure done every time I go see him, which is every 3 months, and it's perfect. And I drink about 3 cups of coffee a day, and I eat about 40 milligrams of amphetamines every day. I mean, I eat a lot of stimulants, and I'm fine, man. Ticker's good. But somebody else does that, and they're going to be running through walls. They're going to be so jacked up.
Or dead, yeah. I mean, like, same with you. Like, you know, I got 30 milligrams of vitamins in the morning. And then, you know, but that's time release, so that's spread out. And then
I do
it's
20 in the morning and 20 in the afternoon, instant.
yeah, I couldn't do the instant.
I love it.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I probably would, which is why I don't. Like, I use it just to keep my brain in line. You know, you know, but yeah, I mean, I know some people that you know, can't, you know, just like there's some people that can seemingly drink booze and never they're just fine. Like those people that drink beer all day and they're never drunk. And then, you know, one person has like a wine spritzer and, you know, and they're, you know, making out with coffee makers.
So I don't know if this is going to be a rough question and you guys are just going to hate me for asking, but
We love you, right?
pretend you're stuck on a stranded island and there's nothing on the stranded island but a Starbucks. What do you order?
Medium coffee, black.
You don't mind the drip coffee at Starbucks?
I mean, it's coffee.
Yeah, like I will drink the best available coffee I can.
Yeah.
Like I will drink like shitty like gas station coffee if that's the only thing, which is also what an addict does. Like I do understand that, and the similarities are not lost on me.
So true.
So the addiction is not it's not detrimental to your health.
It's only a problem if you can't afford it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what Barkley said about gambling.
Well,
It's
we're
only a
talking
problem
about
if you can't afford it.
If we're talking about affording, where do y'all source your beans and what do you pay for it? Because I am trying to I like really good coffee, but I don't know what is good coffee. Like I don't know the brands or the different regions that grow good coffee. So I went on Amazon and just started buying highly rated whole beans. And I got this one called Coffee Cult, and this one I use in my drip. And then I got this one called Zazar or something, Razava or something.
Lamasa, yeah.
But this one's for my this is espresso, so I use it in my French press. So where do y'all get your beans?
So I'll get I've got this weird thing where people keep sending me coffee.
How come I don't live that life? Everybody send me coffee. 23.
Do you have a cup of coffee tattooed on your hand? Yes or no?
No.
There we go. There's levels of commitment. All right.
You fail, Josh. You fail.
Yeah.
When we have this coffee discussion when I'm standing next to Norcross, I fail. Generally, I win.
The world needs ditch diggers too. But you know, so I've got a whole bunch. You know, there's a like regular. I mean, and I have no shame in this. Regular Dunkin' from the store for like basic, just day in day out. Like I'm drinking this as much for speed as I am for like flavor. Like the fact that it doesn't taste much like anything, good or bad. It just tastes kind of like coffee, but it's not like disgusting. Is fine. There's a roaster. There's a couple of local roasters that'll get stuff from. There's one up here, and there's actually a handful up here. Some I like more than others. There's a roaster in Chicago called Dark Matter. I love their stuff, and like they come out with limited edition stuff all the time, and it's been really good. There's a company called Tinker in Indianapolis that my business partner Josh loves, and he actually sent me some for Christmas, so I've been going through that. It's, you know, it's more the roast. Like I don't really like dark roast that much. I like a lighter to medium roast because I'll get more of the coffee flavor. And actually the lighter roast is a higher caffeine count often.
And then
I'm learning.
with lighter roasts, is that like so someone who's coming into this, my whole issue is with coffee is and why I add sugar is I hate the bitter taste. So like if someone doesn't want the bitterness, what would you recommend?
Start with a lighter roast. And a lot of it is what can make it bitter more or less is the temperature of the water. And like, that's one of the other things about that drip machine that I have. Like it puts the water at the correct temperature, which is like just over 200. So it's not so hot. You know, the hotter the water, the more bitterness is going to come out when you brew it. That's why cold brew isn't bitter. Like you can use cheaper coffee with cold brew because you're not actually extracting it the same way. And it's not in your like coffee that sucks brewed is totally fine in cold brew because it's a totally different process.
Yeah, like you have one of those Roy, you have one of those like laser thermometers for your kitchen, right? Like this is what I got because I realized I was boiling my water too hot when I made coffee and tea. So to teach myself like how my kettle relates to temperature, I bought one of those like laser thermometers.
Oh, I mean
Just so I can learn like to burn it up the right thing. And the best part about it is that the laser is totally like unnecessary, but it doubles as a cat toy. So you can like while you're waiting for the water to boil, you can like play red dot with your cat.
Well, I don't have a cat, so and my dog couldn't give a shit. But
I don't like my cats.
I like your cat.
I recently bought a pour of an actual pour over kettle because I got tired of using one that wasn't, and it's got a thermometer built into it, but it should be about 202, 200. I think 202 is the exact number. Water boils at 212. Boil it and let it sit for like 2 minutes. That's plenty. That's good. Like that'll give you the right temperature. When it's boiling, let it, take it off the boil, let it sit for 5 minutes, and then it'll be at the right temperature. Like, I mean, put it this way, like, I love going to hipster coffee shops because I don't like hipsters, but I love hipster coffee shops because, like, they put way more effort into it than I would do with anything in my life ever. Mm-hmm. They care more about the process of their coffee than I do probably about the education of my child. And I study with him every night. So, but yeah, so they'll go into
still like sending your kids to a school and just hoping for the best, right? Like you're not like homeschooling.
More or less. Oh yeah. No, I'm fine with public schools. But I need to get shit done during the day. But
right.
The way that and they'll break everything out. They'll explain all the nuances. Find a local shop that actually knows what they're doing and go when it's not busy. And they will answer every question you might ever have, and probably a bunch that you don't even have or even care about, because that's their job and they actually enjoy it. Not a Starbucks, not anything like that, but some a small local basically hipster coffee shop. But if someone's new getting into it, I mean, before even buying anything for the house, I would find some of those local shops and start to and try the different things that they do and get a feel for what you actually like. Because, like you're saying, it's always been bitter. There's so many things that go into that can make it bitter that have nothing to do with the actual coffee. It's how it's being, prepared. I was in San Francisco 2 years ago and went to, last summer I went and I hit 14 shops. That's my record. Yeah, I mean, I got coffee in all of them because that's the only way it counts. But the time before I went to this one shop and they had this $20,000 Japanese siphon machine. This thing was awesome. It was totally rad. Way obviously the person, the one person that worked for this coffee shop who's allowed to touch it happened to be working that day, so we actually got to have some. But otherwise, it's just there because whoever it was, Joe wasn't there that day. You're not getting any coffee out of this thing because Joe's the only one that's been allowed to touch this because this thing is worth more than your life.
Was the coffee that great out of it?
It was good. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was really good. How much better compared to some, because it's rarely can you honestly compare unless you're the same water, the same temperature, the same beans, ground at the same time, made in two separate machines side by side is really the only way you could even begin to make those kind of comparisons.
That's just basic science, right? I mean,
pretty much.
So I did go to a hipster coffee shop down the street from my work the other day, and I tried nitrogen infused coffee. Was not a fan. Are you guys fans of this?
Oh yeah, that's the one that drips like a beer on Nitro. It's got the really.
Yeah, it's got it. You got it.
I like it. We have a fancy place here that does that. I kind of like it.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 or 3 shops near me that do the same thing. It's good on cold brew, and it's a nice to have sort of thing. It's I don't know how much better it makes it.
It's the mouthfeel. It's a texture thing. I don't know if it adjusts the flavor too much, but it's you gotta want that kind of that's why I like cream in my morning coffee. I like that texture of a bit of creaminess, and that the Nitro stuff, it adds that kind of mouthfeel to it.
Yeah, I had that before I actually ever had a cold brew. And because it was a nitrogen cold brew, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, this is the best thing ever," and I didn't like it. I've never actually tried a cold brew non-nitrogen. And
Cold brew is great when it's done right.
yeah, now I'm kind of intrigued by it, but the only cold brews I get are like 7-Eleven, Starbucks in a can cold brew.
You're good.
I have got Dunkin' Donuts cold brew at a couple work camps because I was like, "Ah, crap, I gotta go to Dunkin' Donuts," because caffeine. That was pretty acceptable.
Yeah, and frankly, I mean, the thing about cold brew is it's so ridiculously easy to make that, like Roy, you could make some tonight and have it tomorrow. Like,
It just takes time. Exactly. You got to be willing to prepare for the future self.
like 12 days, I mean, it's one of the, I even like I made a little online calculator for myself to do the water to coffee ratio. And it's grind your coffee. You can go so much as like put it in with the water, let it totally sit. Like you don't even have to, you just got to filter it obviously on the way out. And then let it sit 12 to 18 hours. The longer you let it sit, the stronger it gets. I usually go the 18. So that way, if I want to, I can cut it or I can drink it straight,
And you go too long.
The problem with cold brew is you have to think about wanting coffee when you don't actually need coffee, right? You need to be like, "I'm about to go to bed. Let me make coffee," and that's just weird.
But that's why I make
documentation in your code. You're doing something for your future self, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
We had this conversation last podcast. There you go, Roy.
And frankly, like I make, I'll make a gallon or so at a time. So, and it's good for like about 2 weeks. You're good for 2 weeks.
And do you leave it in the fridge for the 18 hours or?
No, it's on the counter.
Oh, really? I always put it in the fridge.
I've always done it on the counter.
Interesting.
I mean, I put it in the fridge when I'm done.
Wouldn't that be room temp brew instead of cold brew?
No, the water's cool. I mean, it's not outside.
Cold brew?
It's my house is nice and air conditioned. So
I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I was going to make a dumb joke about how like last week Roy made the thing about how he only does inline docs because PHP Storm will do it for him, and I was like, maybe that's my problem. Is like PHP Storm won't actually cold brew my coffee for me.
I mean,
So
like,
I'm not getting my like documentation in order to like cold brew.
Because PHP Storm does my documentation for me very easily. It's the same reason I like my Nespresso machine.
Yeah, Sublime. Sublime Text has an add-on that does the doc blocks too. So I mean, it's
Right,
just one of the.
This is why return types are so great in PHP 7 is because they can actually figure that out too.
Yeah. So, but like, some of the other stuff that, it is, I mean, again, people are like, "Why do you have so many coffee makers?" I'm like, well, they all coffee a little bit differently. And I can. That's the other reason. I own like 70 coffee mugs. Don't give a shit. I have the room. So, but it's still one of those things where, I mean, for everybody getting in, like, it's become very much like a culture thing, and it's become very much, like a status thing, and like the cold brew, at least, like I make it and I've got it ready, and like I usually when I'm done brewing it, because I brew it in like a large capacity, I'll either save glass bottles if I happen to, like there's a iced tea that I would get, like 16 ounce, but it was an actual glass bottle with a lid that I could screw back on. So I would save and wash those. So like when I'm done, I'd fill that in. Or on Amazon, half the time you can get like, those old Grolsch bottles with like the pop tops. Mm-hmm. They sell those, and they're not expensive at all. And then half the time, like in Target's like dollar aisle, they'll have like those little like milk jug looking things that are also glass, and I'll just fill those. So like I'll fill up a bunch of bottles and just, I've got them ready to go.
Correct.
Like my next is like I'm gonna start experimenting with my cold brew. Like I'm gonna try with different stuff doing it. Like I'm gonna like put a little sugar in it when it's in the beginning to see how that changes it. Some other little flavor stuff here and there just to see how I can tweak it.
Yeah, the only other thing I was thinking about was we're talking about hipster coffee shops again. I was born and raised in San Francisco, so I've definitely been to quite a few super hipster coffee shops. And the one thing I missed, I haven't found one here. I haven't found a coffee shop that does, you're like, when they brew it, they like mix all the shit together right in front of you. And like, it's, they make it all for your one cup. But like, as they're mixing shit in, you can actually talk to them about it. And I liken it. I keep it very similar to like going to a brew house or something like that, where you can kind of walk in and be like, hey, I like this, and most of the time the other person is going to be like, all right, you should try this. Let me make something for you. It's an interesting experience because it's definitely it's just I mean, it's coffee. It's not necessarily like beer or like a random cocktail, but
I mean, frankly, the nuances in coffee are in line with beer as far as the different brew methods, the different flavor profiles, the, you know, where it's grown, you know, the roast, you know, how, you know, whether it's light roast or dark roast, stuff like that, the type of beans it is, they are. So I mean, there's a lot of correlation between the two.
I've
But
been brewing my own beer for about 10 years, and it's very similar because the longer you roast the grain, the more it affects the flavor of the beer. And the same thing with the coffee. The longer you roast the bean, the different the flavors change. Like you get more of a caramelly flavor from grain when you roast it, kind of a mid-level, because it's caramelizing all those little sugars and shit in the barley. I suspect the bean reacts very similarly. The longer you roast it, the more the flavors like completely change.
yeah, and the culture thing is there too. Like the one thing I've noticed, again, let's relate this back to WordPress. When I look at the WordPress community, there's definitely like, and there's overlap, but there's like the people who love coffee and they'll go gung ho over coffee, and there's people who love the microbrew beers and they know all the microbreweries and they brew their own beer. And yeah, there's some overlap between those two, but like I don't know if it's like a developer thing or like, you know, in engineering, like that's kind of how our mind is, and sometimes you like getting into like that technical stuff, but I don't know, it's kind of a cool culture thing to see. Like it kind of shocked me at first. Like I'm like, wow, there's a lot of people who into microbrews at WordCamps, and then I started getting into the, you know, I met Josh and then started learning about all the people who like coffee and all the like nuances with coffee, and I'm just like, who are you people? Like
But it's about tinkering. Like, isn't that why we like code? Right? Like Pippin has this whole thing about how he like limits his work hours for his plugins. But as far as I can tell, like he goes home and like brews beer and like does woodworking, right? I'm sure he also like spends time with his family. But it's like you're doing the same thing, bro. I mean, I should, like I'm trying to be as cool as Pippin.
I got into brewing beer to save money. It was cheaper. I can make quality IPAs and stuff for way cheaper than buying it from the store. But then, yeah, you start getting nerdy on it and getting really into it, getting better equipment and going on.
yeah, like I mean, like almost anything, like once you start getting into it, you reach a point where you either need to deep dive into whatever that is, or you stop because like you've hit a limit, you know, with any sort of skill, any sort of trade, any sort of, you know, with sports, with, you know, with coding. I mean, like, yeah, you could get by on, you know, knowing a few things here and chug along for a little bit, but eventually you will hit a point where like you either need to you need to start learning or you need to start doing something else, because you've just expended, you can't do anything more with the knowledge that you have. And, you know, and beer, like I don't drink, but like beers, you know, like coffee, stuff like that, where, you know, there's so much information and there's so many nuances and little offshoots of what and how people do things. And, you know, that there's seemingly no limit as to how much you could actually learn if you really wanted to. Like, I want to start roasting my own beans. Like, that's one of the things I plan on doing this year is actually, you know, roasting my own beans. And there's a bunch of, you know, like I've been doing a whole bunch of reading on it, you know, where to go get the beans that aren't roasted yet. And the different ways to do it, depending on how you want it. And, you know, again, all that other stuff that people do. And like, that's the next level of my coffee nerding is going to be making my own beans.
But
not growing my own, obviously, but roasting them.
But like, to get back to Roy's thing, don't you think like it's a similar like personality type? You know what I mean? Like I used to be like playing bands, do guitar stuff, but like, and then I was like, hey, I'm actually more interested in the technology than anything. Like, I love music, but then like playing music, I was more interested in the technology. So I got into recording engineering, right? Like that was my last career. Because I was that like, because I have that like tinker, figure out how it works, how to optimize it, how to make it better type personality. Right? Like, so I was more interested in like building guitars than making guitars, or recording guitars than playing guitars. And like, I think that's the same reason why, like, I found a really good fit in being a developer. And that's the kind of personality type that goes, okay, this coffee stuff is good, but what if we really optimize it? Or
yeah, I mean, well, think about, remember in Breaking Bad, I forget what season it was because I watched it piecemeal, but there was the other scientist guy, and like, I think he was like Norwegian or something, but like, he brings Walter White over the one night, and he has this like, just like chemistry set coffee thing going on.
Yeah.
And then he drinks it, he's like, holy shit, why are we making meth? Like that was his response. Like, why are we bothering with meth? This is fantastic.
I forgot all about that scene, man. That's great.
And like the guy was a chemist and, applied the whole, the chemistry knowledge. And, like so much goes into coffee that, I mean, I think developers get into it, because it gives them something else to obsess over. It gives them, and they drink it anyway. I think a lot of developers get into like the whole beer culture is because a lot of them drink just to take the edge off and just shut their mind off for a little bit anyway. So it's like one of those, well, I'm here and I'm already doing this, I may as well like learn what I'm doing, because at least for me, like as much as the tinkering stuff, which I get into, is I don't like being involved in things like that. I don't know how they work. I'm fine with not knowing how shit works that I have nothing to do with. Like I start my truck, if it doesn't start, I call somebody, and I tell them, make it start again. That's as far as, like very little things I can do on my vehicle, but otherwise I don't. So, there's and stuff with my house, like I'm having renovations on right now. Certain stuff I'm totally fine with doing myself. Other stuff, there's no way in hell I would ever do it myself because I know better. So like, I don't know how certain stuff, I don't know how the AC system in my house works. I just know that there's a phone number that I call if it stops working quickly. But if I'm involved in something, I can't stand not knowing how it works. So like I've been drinking coffee daily since about 15.
Yeah.
Like on the way to high school, I would stop off and get a cup of coffee and a pack of cigarettes on the way to school every morning. Mm-hmm. I used to sneak into the teacher's lounge to get coffee during the day. I got caught once or twice and they were like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm pouring a cup of coffee. They're like, let's go. Like they're like, technically, I don't think you're supposed to be here, but like, fuck it, just go. I'd be like, I'm just gonna go coffee. And from that point, like it's the only thing I've done consistently for like a large chunk of my life. And like some of the devices, some of the stuff I do is purely because like it's just fun to do. Is like the process of doing it is as much important as the end result. Like some of the coffee brewing and some of the devices, like it's fun to do. I'm still just getting a cup of coffee when I'm done, and then I could easily get 5 other ways that are faster, but it's fun. And that's why I do it. That's the reason why I still write code. I enjoy doing it. If I didn't like doing this, I'd quit.
Awesome. So we've made our connection. We've come full circle, and developers and coffee people and microbrewers are all one and the same. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you guys for joining us and listening in. As usual, please subscribe to us on YouTube, iTunes, and Google Play. You can listen to us or watch us on YouTube. Thank you, Norcross, Flanagan, and Pollack for joining. And I will see you guys next week.